I want to ask, so I know right now you guys are based out of California. Were you
Yeah,
born and raised in California?
I am.
Got it. So
I'm born
sports
and raised
is
in
huge.
California. Yeah. And actually my co-founder and I went to high school together. So we knew each other,
Got
but
it.
then reconnected later. But yeah, I mean, my family's here at my 98-year-old grandma is basically next door. So yeah, I'm here.
Yes. So I mean that too, right? California, it's a big sports state. The weather is roughly pretty good, right? Year round. So you
Yeah.
can play all of these sports. And it's interesting because I'm assuming that you enjoyed water sports or swimming in some aspect growing up. Maybe it wasn't your sport of choice or exercise of choice, but you did mention that you picked up surfing, right? When you went to law
Mhm.
school. So was
Mhm.
that something that you always did on the side?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself a water baby. Like we used to go to the ocean all the time and just play. I could never get enough. I still like my happiest place is like by the water, by the ocean. But I really do think there is this like disconnect of like loving water and playing and whether you're boogie boarding or surfing or like that activity versus lap swimming in a pool,
Yes.
which feels or felt monotonous and solitary and silent and not fun like the other kind of water sports or other sort of activities are. So yeah, like I always knew how to swim, but I never thought of swimming as
Mhm.
the fitness option, I guess.
Yes. So there's always things that each guest shares that I can relate to tremendously.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you went to University of Michigan, which I just
Yeah.
learned, a few minutes ago, which is interesting because I actually lived in Michigan for about a year
Oh wow.
because I was working for the Detroit Lions. But
Mhm.
for me, coming from Hawaii to Michigan and experiencing a really cold winter, I lived in Colorado briefly before that, but Michigan winter is way different than anyone anywhere else. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
you had similar kind of like weather shock coming from California to Michigan. Did you play for Michigan all 4 years or 5 years?
I played only 2 years.
2 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, you were there long enough. So was that something?
I was there for 4 years, but only played for 2 years. So
2 years,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Was that something that, I mean, you can tell that just weather alone, right? It really affects our activity level. So was that something that was different for you? I know that you were playing soccer, so you're still active, but what was that transition from California to Michigan like?
Yeah. Well, I can only imagine from Hawaii too is like a whole other level. First, I made the decision to go to because I knew that if I didn't leave California for college, I might never leave the state. And I wanted to live somewhere else and maybe have an educated opinion on why I don't ever want to live in the cold
Yes.
again. But yeah, I mean, it was a bit shocking how gray and cold it was. I mean, I will say it's also where I started to get into hot yoga, and I think just literally just to try and warm up.
Yes.
So that was my first experience with heated yoga, which I loved. But yeah, it was more of like a trek to get yourself to go out into the cold and to either get to the gym. Obviously, you're not really running outside all the time, but I definitely learned to appreciate kind of what you take for granted when you live in a traditionally sunny year-round
Mhm.
state where there's not as many excuses of why you can't get outside. But it definitely affects it. It's also why I think growing up playing, soccer year round, it wasn't like a seasonal sport. You played it all the time. Whereas when you go to like other states where the weather really is a factor, I played a lot of indoor soccer there because again, of the weather. So it was a totally different experience than what I had been used to for, the 18 years prior to that.
Yes. And the other thing that was a surprise for me, I don't know, you can chime in, but because they're so far north, right? Besides the coldness, it was well, during winter, the amount of daytime you had was so short, like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I remember it was like, oh, the sun's going down. And that's
Yeah.
so unusual, especially for me. But I think, like you said, that factors into an active lifestyle because now it's like you're doing more things indoor, you're doing different things, right? You're not the sun or the daytime is not available all the time. So then you have to kind of shift how you're going to train and all of this stuff. The reason why I
Yeah.
wanted to bring this up and ask this to you was this when you started to get more into that kind of boutique fitness or, following apps or training more indoors, or did this have any, I guess, influence into how you kind of fell into this innovative training tech and all of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the only other thing I'll say is that
Mm-hmm.
the time frame in the winters work against you. But I will say there's nothing like a Michigan summer. I don't know if you were
That's
there for
true,
a
yes.
summer, but it
Mhm.
was like, because it's on the western side of the Eastern time
Yes.
zone. So it's light until like 11 p.m. It's like an amazing
Yes. That
day.
is
So
true.
on that, so it is kind of a cool balance there. But yeah,
Yes.
summer doesn't last forever. But yeah, I think it was kind of maybe a perfect storm. And I don't know if I've ever really thought about it in this sense, but one, going into early retirement, right?
Mhm.
So like having to learn how to be active or work out post playing when you're, working out double days every day, organized. And two, the weather being a factor is like, okay, how do I stay active? I'm not just going to go on a run, and like just running on a treadmill felt, kind of boring. And it actually is where I think I started taking my first like spinning class. Soul Cycle, I think started around 2009. So this is a little bit pre Soul Cycle when it was a little more niche. But I do think it's where I started to play around with like I said, like the heated yoga classes or like some other things. And I was in Ann Arbor, so, they were all smaller mom and pop.
Yeah.
But after that, then I lived in New York for a little. And so I think that with the boutique fitness options and then coming back to California for law school was where kind of it all came together in terms of like really, really being interested in the boutique fitness. And again, at that time, studios were popping up all over the place in a lot of different athletic facets. So you really did have like the pick of the litter in terms of trying new stuff as well.